Hi, thanks for stopping in. My name is Liz Faria. I'm an MPH policy student, and today I'm going to be talking about the Middletown Airfield Superfund site in Pennsylvania.
In November 2021, the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection proposed setting maximum contaminant levels for two forms of per- and polyfluoroalkyl substances. These substances have been associated with adverse developmental and immune system effects. The objective of this presentation is to increase public understanding in advance of the public hearings and commentary.
This slide will give you an overview of the topics we'll discuss.
These synthetic chemicals have been in use since the 1940s. Their nonstick properties make them good for heat, stain, and water-resistant items such as tents, fire extinguishers, and cookware. Exposure to poly and perfluoroalkyl substances, particularly via drinking water, poses developmental, immune, metabolic, and endocrine health risks. Industrial sites that use or manufacture these compounds, as well as military fire training areas and wastewater treatment facilities, have all been associated with higher concentrations of polyfluoroalkyl substances in public water supplies. PFOA and PFOS are both associated with very serious conditions such as cancer or miscarriage. These chemicals are persistent in the human body and throughout the environment and don't break down when exposed to air, water, or sunlight. They can be found in air, soil, and both groundwater and surface water. You can see to the image to the right that although PFAS goes through the wastewater treatment plants, unfortunately, they are not processed, and thus there are higher concentrations in the water that comes out as compared to the water that goes in. In other words, the effluent water has a higher concentration of PFAS than the influent water. Due to widespread use in clothing and packaging, other routes of exposure include water, food, packaging, treated fabrics, protective sprays and waxes, cosmetic, as well as personal care products. The EPA typically sets maximum contaminant levels, or MCLs. In other words, how much of a substance can be present before there is a risk to human health or the environment. However, in the absence of a federal standard, states have begun to take it upon themselves to regulate PFAS, resulting in a patchwork of regulations and varying standards. The EPA, although it has not set a formal guideline, has set an advisory of 70 parts per trillion, or 0.07 micrograms per liter. Pennsylvania's proposal is to have 0.014 micrograms per liter. Other states have taken upon themselves to set amounts that are far lower than what is currently set by the EPA's advisory guideline. If you take a look at this map and see the areas that have the darkest orange and red, in other words, the highest concentrations of contaminants, you might see some overlap with some of the states on the previous slide, the states that have already taken it upon themselves to start setting more stringent requirements. Pennsylvania is one such state that has higher levels of PFAS. Here, you can see the Middletown Airfield Superfund site location, which is where the Harrison International Airport is currently located. The federal government operated this airfield from 1868 until 1966. About 20 years later, volatile organic compounds were detected in the groundwater wells. In 1986, the site was added to the Environmental Protection Agency's Superfund Program's National Priorities list. In 1997, the EPA took the site off of the list after it had met all of the established cleanup goals. So, who is responsible for the contamination and why does this matter? Thinking about future funding and infrastructure gaps, understanding who is going to foot the bill is incredibly important. Many civilian airports and military fire training areas have been contaminated by PFAS that are used during fire training activities, so there's still a fair amount of debate.
And on that note, you can see here that the hazardous site cleanup funds are expected to dip sometime in the 2023 to 2024 range.
Here's a little bit more of a detailed timeline. The two items that I would like to draw your attention to are that in 2017, the EPA stated that the Harrison International Airport operations are most likely the source of the contamination, as opposed to the military-related activities that had previously gone on. The second item is that in 2021, the state set out to set a rule to set a maximum contaminant level for two forms of PFAS. Early next year, the public is set to comment on these proposals. And in December of 2021, President Joe Biden signed off on a bipartisan infrastructure law allocating $240 million to the state of Pennsylvania to help clean up the water. The proposal to set maximum contaminant levels for PFAS received overwhelming support, an astounding 17 to 2. While the MCL proposal is being considered, a statewide sampling plan was underway. On track with other states, PFOS and PFOA were two of the most common contaminants. So in summary, the current administration has set its sight on targeting PFAS pollution. With the void of EPA leadership, a patchwork of legislation on the state side has developed. There is a need for a more unified standard. And in the meantime, residents of Pennsylvania should be aware of this issue. Public and private leaders need to also think through how the infrastructure capabilities or gaps are coming up and make good use of funding streams that just opened up through the $240 million infrastructure law. Hopefully this presentation will provide some context as Pennsylvania heads into a period of public commentary early next year.
Thanks for taking the time to watch this presentation. If you have any questions, please reach out at the email below. Thanks so much.